Hello and welcome back to another flute tip of the week. Once again, I am finally back in my apartment. Seems that I've spent more time on planes this year than actually living in my house. Luckily, I don't actually have any flights booked for the next while, so at least that means I can hang out with my hamster and do practice as I will. As the weather is getting a little bit colder, audition time's around the corner, and really everything is happening that could possibly make our instruments want to go out of tune, there's always things we can do to battle that. And so today, we're going to be talking about something that'll help with tuning, color, and also with your technique. So let's see what it is today. Have a good knowledge of special fingerings so that you may draw upon them for dynamic, tuning, color, or speed purposes. During my last 2 years of study when I was working with William Bennett, he did a lot of focus on tuning and color, and a lot of this was based around the use of special fingerings, or as a lot of people call them, alternate fingerings. It can be a little bit of a misconception for us to think about alternate fingerings as the easy way out or kind of a cheating way. But there are some special fingerings that you use that will actually be extremely helpful for performance purposes and will really enhance how you're sounding. First, I wanted to talk about a specific note on the piccolo, which will very often be played quite flat. Most of us will know that when we're going in the higher register on the piccolo, the natural tendency is for it to want to go gradually more flat. The worst note for this, however, is the higher C sharp. Growing up, we are all built to be afraid of any C sharp, whether it be on the flute, piccolo, alto, or even when we just think about it at night. However, it's important to remember that while the lower C sharp will normally be a little bit on the high side, the high C sharp is normally tending to go a little bit flatter, whether it be on the piccolo or actually on the flute. It's just more noticeable on the piccolo. So basically, if you have a length of C sharp which is longer than a semiquaver, or for my North Americans, an eighth note, then it's important to really have a good understanding and control of this fingering so that it doesn't feel like you're doing some random gymnastics in the middle of a scale, or when you're about to land on a final note. For this fingering, you play as if you're doing the higher D, so you'll have your ring and middle finger down, but your thumb will be off. With your right hand, you're going to have your pinky, third, and second finger down, and then it'll sound like this. Alternately, there is a secondary special fingering that is based off of this where basically you just don't have the second finger of the right hand down. So you can use that one if you're doing a very quiet C sharp and need it to be just a little bit higher. Or you can use it for your regular C sharp if your piccolo tends to play a very flat C sharp. Okay, now we're going on to the flute. As with the C sharp for the piccolo, you can use that exact same fingering on the flute. And I wouldn't recommend this for regular usage, but if you're, say, playing in unison or even in harmony with other instruments, it'll be really important to have a good understanding of that fingering so that if you're playing quietly, you'll be able to adjust yourself without necessarily having to roll the flute or really adjust your embouchure. The special fingering that I use most is for the higher C. Overall, the tuning on the flute is okay, and we get used to our own flutes gradually and just know where we have to adjust. However, we are going to have times where we're playing quietly in the high register where it wants to duck down, and we don't want to sacrifice the sound or the tuning just to be able to get it stable. So my favorite alternate fingering is the C. Let's say you're playing that octave interval in the second movement of the Poulenc Sonata, where you have your middle C comfortable, and then you have to do a decrescendo while slurred up to the higher C. So instead of doing it with the regular fingering, you can use the alternate fingering. And basically, the alternate fingering for the C is a regular F without the thumb. In general, you can work out alternate fingerings for the higher register based off of what is a fifth below. Another example of this is for B flat, where you do the same fingering as for E flat, except without your middle finger. And what this does is it creates just a little bit more resistance so that it is a really stable, quiet note, rather than getting worried about your embouchure and feeling a bit more tight. One of the more famous notes that we often have to play quietly is the higher D. For example, in the Daphnis and Chloe solo, where we have the D suddenly float out after a quick articulated section, or also at the end of one of the excerpts for Leonore Overture No. 3. But there are always going to be even more musical examples of using special fingerings, but these are some of the more important ones for using the high D one. So you'll use your regular high D, except now you're adding the A flat paddle and the first key of the right hand. Say you're going to do some sort of arpeggio where you're loud and then you need to have subito piano. As with the B flat and the C, it adds a little bit more resistance so that it's nice and comfortable to be able to play quietly without the fear of it dropping down the octave. So again, that tip was have a good knowledge of special fingerings so you may draw upon them for dynamic, tuning, color, or speed purposes. I hope you find this week's tip helpful. Special fingerings are something that I use almost every day, and I think it's important for people to get really comfortable with them and also not think of them as cheats. They are not cheats. They are additions. It's like when you get a really awesome car and you put better brakes on it. That's not cheating, that's just making use of the tools you have. So until next time, flute happy, tune happy, play happy, and realize that there are multiple options. This is Louise. Hi. She plays oboe.